The capitalist organization of social life, we are speaking about private capitalism in the West and bureaucratic capitalism in the East, creates a perpetually renewed crisis in every sphere of human activity. This crisis appears most intensely in the realm of production meaning here the shop floor, not the economy or the market. In its essence, however, the situation is the same in all other fields, whether one is dealing with the family, education, international relations, politics, or culture. Everywhere, the capitalist structure of society consists of organizing people's lives from the outside, in the absence of those directly concerned, and against their aspirations and interests. This is but another way of saying that capitalism divides society into a narrow stratum of directors, whose function is to decide and organize everything, and the vast majority of the population, who are reduced to carrying out, executing, the decisions made by these directors. As a result of this very fact, most people experience their own lives as something alien to them. This pattern of organization is profoundly irrational and full of contradictions. Under it, repeated crises of one kind or another are absolutely inevitable. It is nonsensical to seek to organize people, either in production or in politics, as if they were mere objects, systematically ignoring what they themselves wish or how they themselves think things should be done. In real life, capitalism is obliged to base itself on the people's capacity for self-organization, on the individual and collective creativity of the producers. Without making use of these abilities, the system could not survive for a day. But the whole official organization of modern society both ignores and seeks to suppress these abilities to the utmost. The result is not only an enormous waste due to untapped capacity. The system does more. It necessarily engenders opposition, a struggle against it by those upon whom it seeks to impose itself. Long before one can speak of revolution or political consciousness, people refuse in their everyday working lives to be treated like objects. The capitalist organization of society is therefore compelled not only to structure itself in the absence of those most directly concerned, but also to take shape against them. The net result is not only waste, but perpetual conflict. If 1,000 individuals have among them a given capacity for self-organization, capitalism consists in more or less arbitrarily choosing 50 of those individuals, vesting them with managerial authority, and deciding that the others should just be cogs. Metaphorically speaking, this is about a 95% loss of social initiative and drive. But there is more to it. As the 950 ignored individuals are not cogs, and as capitalism is obliged up to a point to base itself on their human capacities, and in fact to develop them, these individuals will react and struggle against what the system imposes upon them. The creative faculties they are not allowed to exercise on behalf of a social order that rejects them, and which they reject, are now utilized against that social order. A permanent struggle develops at the very heart of social life. It soon becomes the source of further waste. The narrow stratum of directors has henceforth to divide its time between organizing the work of those below and seeking to counteract, neutralize, deflect, or manipulate their resistance. The function of the managerial apparatus ceases to be merely organizational and soon assumes all sorts of coercive aspects. Those in authority in a large modern factory, in fact, spend less of their time organizing production than coping, directly or indirectly, with the resistance of the exploited, whether it be a question of supervision, of quality control, of determining piece rates, of human relations, of discussions with shop stewards or union representatives. On top of all this, there is of course the permanent preoccupation of those in power with making sure that everything is measurable, quantifiable, verifiable, and supervisable, so as to deal in advance with any inventive counteraction the workers might launch against new methods of exploitation. The same applies, with all due corrections, to the total organization of social life and to all the essential activities of any modern state. The irrationality and contradictions of capitalism do not show up only in the way social life is organized, they appear even more clearly when one looks at the real content of the life this system produces. More than any other social order, capitalism has put work at the center of human activity, and more than any other social order, capitalism makes of work something that is absurd. Absurd not from the viewpoint of the philosopher or of the moralist, but from the point of view of those who have to perform it. What is challenged today is not only the human organization of work, but its nature, its content, its methods, the very instruments and purpose of capitalist production. The two aspects are of course inseparable, but it is the second that needs to be stressed. As a result of the nature of work in a capitalist enterprise, and however it may be organized, the activity of the worker, instead of being the organic expression of his human faculties, turns into an alien and hostile process that dominates the subject of this process. In theory, the proletarian is tied to this activity only by a thin but unbreakable thread, the need to earn a living. But this ensures that one's work, even the day that is about to begin, dawns as something hostile. Work under capitalism therefore implies a permanent mutilation, a perpetual waste of creative capacity, and a constant struggle between the worker and his own activity, between what he would like to do and what he has to do. From this angle too, capitalism can survive only to the extent that reality does not yield to its methods and conform to its spirit. The system functions only to the extent that the official organization of production and of society is constantly resisted, thwarted, corrected, and completed by the effective self-organization of people. Work processes can be effective under capitalism only to the extent that the real attitudes of workers towards their work differ from what is prescribed. Working people succeed in learning the general principles pertaining to their work, to which, according to the spirit of the system, they should have no access, and concerning which the system seeks to keep them in the dark. They then apply these principles to the specific condition in which they find themselves, whereas in theory, this practical application can be spelled out only by the managerial apparatus. Exploiting societies persist because those whom they exploit help them to survive. Slave-owning and feudal societies perpetuated themselves because ancient slaves and medieval serfs worked according to the norms set by the masters and lords of those societies. The proletariat enables capitalism to continue by acting against the system. Here we find the origin of the historical crisis of capitalism, and it is in this respect that capitalism is a society pregnant with revolutionary prospects. Slavery or serf society functioned as far as the exploited did not struggle against the system, but capitalism can function only insofar as those whom it exploits actively oppose everything the system seeks to impose upon them. The final outcome of this struggle is socialism, namely the elimination of all externally imposed norms, methods, and patterns of organization, and the total liberation of the creative and self-organizing capacities of the masses.